January 14th, 1944, southern Italy. Dawn arrived without warmth. It seeped in low and gray, filtering through fog that clung to the ridgeline above Foggia airfield like damp wool. Frost glazed the soil, turning earth brittle and pale, each footprint cracking the surface skin before sinking in. The land yielded quickly to cold. Metal did not. For Bofors 40mm anti-aircraft guns stood in deliberate alignment along the ridge, barrels locked eastward toward the wheat flats that stretched away into nothingness. Each gun was spaced 20 meters apart, enough distance to survive a blast, close enough to overlap fire. Their long barrels exhaled faint streams of vapor, mist curling upward as if the weapons themselves were breathing, alive, waiting. Behind the line, transport trucks sat dark and silent. Generators rested under canvas covers, engines cooling with slow, uneven ticks that echoed strangely through the fog. The sound felt mechanical and patient, like the workings of a clock hidden beneath cloth. Corporal Anton Weiss stood at the second gun from the left. He rotated the elevation wheel a fraction and stopped. The oil inside the gearing had thickened overnight, sluggish from the cold. He felt the resistance through his gloves, the drag where movement should have been smooth. Weiss leaned in, placing his hands flat against the housing, warming the metal with his palms. When he pulled back, his gloves left dark smears where the oil had softened. Orders had been read twice before first light. Hold fire until visual confirmation. No exceptions. The words were simple. The consequences were not. A mistake here wouldn't just kill men. It would halt flight operations for hours, possibly days. Foggia was too valuable. Ammunition wasted meant reports filed. Reports meant delays. And delays rippled outward through supply chains that tolerated no deviation. Somewhere across the field, a truck coughed sharply. A single backfire snapped through the quiet like a rifle. Shot. A few heads turned. Then silence returned, heavier than before. Radio static swelled in Weiss's headset, uneven, restless. Not a message, just noise, creeping in and out like interference from a distant storm. He adjusted the dial without looking. Behind the gun line, the squad leader paced slowly, boots crunching against frozen soil. Each step produced a soft, deliberate sound. Breath bloomed white and vanished. He stopped, scanned the fog, then resumed pacing. Weiss remained still. His eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, tracking the faint seam where fog met sky. A narrow band of washed-out color, neither night nor day. Just transition. Before the war, Weiss had spent 3 years maintaining turbine assemblies at a hydroelectric plant along the Danube. He had been young then, barely 20, hands always blackened with grease and metal dust. Precision had ruled everything there. Torque values, sequences, balance. A turbine didn't care about intent, only alignment. The Bofors felt familiar for the same reason. Gears, resistance, ratios, systems that responded best to rhythm, not force. Weiss adjusted the range by a fraction, feeling the recoil plate settle into alignment with a soft, satisfying click. The metal spoke to him through resistance and compliance. He listened. The first sound reached them before the sight. A hum, distant, layered. Not the steady pulse of transport aircraft. This was uneven. Rising, falling, rising again. Weiss counted the intervals silently. 30 seconds, then another 30. The formation should have been tighter. Static flared again, louder this time, then broke entirely. No signal, no coded response. Fog thickened, swallowing the near edge of the wheat field. Someone behind him muttered a curse under their breath. The air carried the smell of cold lubricant and faint traces of spent fuses from the previous night's test fire. Weiss tracked the sound alone now, though the horizon offered nothing solid. Then movement. Dots, low, faint, cutting through the fog faster than regulation altitude allowed. They appeared and vanished, reappeared again in a staggered line that didn't match friendly approach patterns. Weiss steadied his hand on the sight lever. During training, his habit had drawn laughter. Aim behind the lead. Too cautious, they said. Too slow. But turbines had taught him something different. Delay didn't always mean error. Sometimes lag stabilized imbalance. Sometimes what trailed arrived exactly where it needed to be. The squad leader raised his binoculars, straining to pull shape from mist. No flare rose. No response to the challenge signal. One aircraft dipped suddenly, then corrected hard. The formation flattened in a way Weiss didn't like. Too sharp, too reactive. Then the fog thinned just enough. A wing passed through the gray. A dark cross. Not round. Weiss did not shout. He did not wait for the order that had not yet come. He fired. One round, then another. The Bofors bucked against its mount, recoil rolling through the frozen ground like a pulse through bone. Tracers carved red lines into the fog, slicing forward with brutal certainty. The sound was immediate, overwhelming, metal screaming, mechanisms cycling, springs snapping back into place. 2 aircraft disintegrated before the alarm reached the other guns. One burst apart mid-bank, shedding fragments that vanished in a cloud. The second folded inward as if crushed, engine tearing free before the fuselage followed. Only then did the rest of the battery open fire. The remaining aircraft broke formation instantly, scattering northward, disappearing back into the fog before full daylight could claim the field. Silence returned in pieces. Smoke drifted. Shell casings clattered against frozen earth. The squad leader lowered his binoculars slowly. Weiss released the trigger. His hands were steady. The gun's barrel steamed faintly, heat bleeding into cold air. Weiss reached forward and rested his palm briefly against the housing, not to cool it, but to feel it settle. The system returning to balance. No one spoke for several seconds. Somewhere, an alarm finally began to wail. The war, catching up.